It's no secret that filmmakers with YouTube channels get sent a lot of free gear. I mean, after a certain channel size, you can more or less ask for whatever you want, and a lot of brands are more than happy to send it out in exchange for exposure, to the point where gear stops being exciting for the most part. So I hope you'll believe me when I say I turn down or send back the vast majority of things that show up at my office. But every once in a while, stuff shows up that's either genuinely useful or different or just so well made that it stands out from all the rest of the unsolicited junk. Please, for the love of God, stop offering me iPhone gimbals.
AI capable.
And in that spirit, this video is about acknowledging the best stuff that's come my way so you know if it's worth investing in for yourself. So in this video, I'm going to single out 6 of my favorite pieces of gear that have shown up at my office over the last few months. And since Black Friday is pretty much over, there's absolutely no pressure to buy any of it. First off, in case it wasn't clear from my intro, this is not a Black Friday promotion. After getting through that weekend, I'm guessing everyone is sick of being sold stuff, including from me, so I purposefully waited until the end of the weekend to publish this video so you didn't think I was pushing you to some affiliate program. There very well could be some stuff still on sale right now, I'm not actually sure, but I just made this because I thought this stuff was pretty cool. And standard disclosure here, no money changed hands with any of these brands. Well, apart from Audiio, the sponsor of today's video, but I mean, none of the stuff I'm actually featuring, you get it. I did get it all for free, so if that makes some of you mad, now's the time to rage comment below. I'm also purposely not posting affiliate links, again, except for Audiio, just to hopefully prove that this is not a secret Black Friday scheme for me to make money. It's just gear that showed up that I liked enough to keep around, and I figured you all might be interested in that kind of thing too. Okay, the first thing that turned up and actually caught my attention is something that I have to admit I wanted to hate pretty badly. I'm not sure about you, but sometimes certain products seem to get hyped so much on social media that it kind of makes me sick of that thing before I even see it in real life. Plus, from a YouTuber perspective, whenever these types of things go viral, I get asked about them over and over again. And this was definitely one of those things. So I'll admit it, I was skeptical and I kind of wanted it to suck before it got here, but sadly that's not the case. And here I'm talking about the Potato Jet tripod by Small Rig. This has got to be one of the most heavily marketed tripods on social since the Peak design, and I was served up like dozens of videos about this on YouTube on the homepage when it came out. And I'll be honest, my first impression watching those videos were that it looked pretty cool, but also kind of gimmicky and like it wouldn't actually work in a fast-paced environment. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, this is a carbon fiber tripod with this really unique handle design where you just press it in and all the legs open up at once, so you're not, fiddling around with twist locks. And as I watched all those videos about it, I just kept thinking, that's gonna break or it's gonna be annoying to use. And so I was pretty surprised when I actually got my hands on it, and it works really, really well. It's relatively lightweight at around 8 pounds, and it actually does what it says it's gonna do, meaning it's for sure the fastest tripod to deploy that I've ever used. Like, hands down, it's not even close. I've only done a couple of tests with it, and I haven't gotten it out into a real world shoot yet, but from what I've seen so far, it might just be my new official B-cam tripod. With a 13-pound weight capacity, it's not burly enough for my main FX9 rig, but it wasn't really meant for that, so I'm not upset there. As a second tripod for interviews with my FX3 though, or maybe for an FX6, it's kind of perfect. It hits the right balance between being light enough to travel with, but sturdy enough to actually use, so I'm guessing it won't be too long before this thing goes out into the field with me. My biggest worry before I touched it was that this handle part would snap in transit, like when I have it jammed into a bag or under a big pile of Pelican cases, but the way the handle folds down put most of my fears to rest, I guess. I really need to stress test this thing before I give it a final verdict, like rough it up with dirt and sand and see how it holds up. And I think my main concern for the long term would be around the internal hydraulic system. Like, it's super clever, but what happens when I squeeze this thing 4,000 times in rough conditions? Like, if it snaps in there, this whole system is pretty much useless, but it's all speculation at this point because none of that has happened and I really like it. I would say though that there is a bit of a shake to this guy when it's fully deployed, which is expected when you're working with legs that are this thin. Like, this isn't a 40-pound O'Connor with spreaders and a giant fluid head. So in some of the more remote places I work, I don't think this would be viable for long lens work or for an outdoor interview because I think the wind would push it around a little bit. But again, I wouldn't expect something at this price point and weight to be able to do that, so it's not really a negative point, just something to be aware of if you're looking at buying this for yourself. So just based on first impressions alone, I have to grudgingly admit that I was wrong, and this thing is pretty damn cool. It's a very innovative approach from SmallRig and Gene over at Potato Jet, so congrats to you both. It's really impressive and I like it. Only time will tell how it'll handle up to my working demands, but if enough people are interested and want to see me take this out and abuse it to see how it holds up, let me know below. And speaking of well made, the next product I want to shout out has to be one of the most incredibly engineered camera accessories I've seen in a long time. So if you've been watching the channel lately, you might have seen me testing cinema lenses for an upcoming dock mini-series that I'll be DPing early next year. So far, the front runners, based on our needs anyways, are the DZO Vespids, and on my FX9, they're great to shoot with. But this will be a 2-camera shoot, and since my B cam is the FX3, that creates an ND problem because the FX3 has no internal ND filters. I normally get around this with screw-on filters, which are fine, but all my filters are 82mm and the DZOs are 77mm. I have a matte box that I could adapt, but I don't like using it on a camera as small as the FX3 as it kind of messes with the balance and form factor, and I also know I can get step-up rings, but then none of the lens caps fit, they don't fit in the case, and it's just not the ideal solution for me. And that's without even acknowledging that the lenses are PL and need an adapter to even fit on the FX3. So that's sort of the context there, and it's why I wanted to check out adapters, specifically this one with a drop-in filter slot from Breakthrough Photography. Now, you might have seen things like this before. At its core, it's just an adapter that converts PL on this side to other mounts, in my case, E-mount on this side. This one's a little bit different than normal adapters though, because it has this drop-in slot, so you can put filters behind the lens instead of in front of it. And it does this job perfectly, but that's also not new, even if it's still very cool. Now, the reason I'm shouting these guys out here is because of the incredible build quality, because this stuff is just mind-blowingly well made. It kind of reminds me of how Bright Tangerine stuff is like obsessively over-engineered, but as soon as I got this out of the box, I realized I was dealing with something made with a lot of love. Like, this is just the storage case that the filters come in, not even talking about the adapter itself. This thing just feels like a Japanese engine block or something. I think I'm so used to camera companies competing to get to the lowest price, and the standard for stuff like this is cheap plastic, but Breakthrough went in exactly the opposite direction, and I'm here for it. Just look at the way that these things click in. That's deeply satisfying, at least for me. And it should tell you everything you need to know about this company and how they approach their products. Now, there's like 50 different filter options on the website. I just went really basic with 2 different strengths of ND and a polarizer. And the filters themselves also have the same sort of build quality as the case. So you just know this stuff isn't gonna break easily, and I love that. Now, I know it's not gonna be for everyone because a lot of people will prioritize cheapness over quality. But if you're the kind of filmmaker who values precision tools that are gonna last a lifetime, this one does one simple job very, very well. I mean, it even ships with a 25-year warranty and a certificate of calibration signed by a human, like with a pen. I mean, I know it's just a piece of paper, but come on, who does that these days? So well done to the team over at Breakthrough. I really respect the workmanship, and I personally think the film industry needs more stuff like this that's built for a lifetime and a lot less cheap crap that ends up in the landfill. You're definitely going to be seeing this stuff on my FX3 very, very soon. Okay, moving on. This is one of the more quirky ideas I've seen in a while, and I personally like it. This camera looking thing is made by Lano, double L-A-N-O. Maybe it's Llano, like Spanish, no sé puede ser. But it's actually a fast dual charger for my FX3 with 2 battery slots in the top that I can plug into the wall, but it's also a USB power bank on its own. So when you charge your batteries at night, it also charges itself, and then during your shoot you can bring it along and either recharge your camera batteries or anything else that connects with USB-C. You could even theoretically power the camera directly through this, so it's an interesting idea that I haven't seen before, which is why I'm including it here. Now, I'm not really sure how this will fit into a professional workflow for me, but I like to recognize new ideas when I see them. I will say that it recharges batteries impressively fast, and I think the website says it's like 60% faster than the wall charger, so I could definitely see some scenarios where this would come in handy, like if you started to run out of battery during a long interview and you needed a recharge quickly. Plus, the whole unit is about the same price as a single Sony battery, so it essentially makes 2 batteries into 4 batteries for the price of 3, if that makes sense. So if you want to roll all day only owning 2 batteries, that's probably doable with this. Moving on, the next thing I also didn't buy is an Audiio membership, because obviously as a sponsor of this video and a longtime supporter of the channel, I haven't paid for Audiio in quite a while. But I have used it for years now as the main source of royalty-free music for this channel and a bunch of my personal projects too. And it's been such a useful tool in my workflow on top of being the best deal out there for a service like this I've ever found. Because even though all the Black Friday madness is over, you can still get a massive 70% off their Pro plan by using the code Luke70, which brings the total down to just $59 for a year. And that's about a quarter of what most of these services charge, and you still get a massive library of music and sound effects and, yes, AI tools. And honestly, my eyes normally glaze over at the first mention of AI gimmicks these days, but what they're rolling out now called Hans AI genuinely sounds pretty neat. I'm actually pretty sure it's being released today, so I haven't actually had a chance to test it, but basically you just describe what you want and it scans the entire catalog to find a song that fits. Like, let's say, I don't know, you say the scene starts with a quiet interior, but the emotion builds as the camera follows a character and it ends with an emotional violin part. It'll go through thousands of songs and find the one that works. That actually does sound kind of useful to me, and it's included with your Pro plan, even with the 70% discount. Anyways, even if you think AI stuff is dumb, Audiio is a great deal and a cool company, so check out the link in the description if you're in the market and use the code Luke70 to save. Next up is a piece of gear that I've known about for many years, but never really understood the full value of until this year. And that's mostly thanks to stealing inspiration from a Lewis Potts video and my camera assistant Hank, who told me to watch it. And here I'm talking about spotlight attachments, because over the last couple of months of experimenting, I realized I could have been using this thing in so many ways throughout my career as a DP that I kind of wish I hadn't waited so long. This one is made by Aperture, but again, there are no affiliate links here or anything, so it's not about the brand and more about all the options that spotlights open up when shooting in tight spaces. I mean, it's good for a lot of things, but for me, the big aha moment was when I figured out that I could use it to bounce light off of big pieces of fabric or even against white walls from way across the room and get really big, soft lighting sources even in tiny spaces. Like normally, if you were doing an interview setup, you'd need at least 6 to 8 feet of space on the key light side of the frame to get up a stand with your light, plus then a 4x or a 6x piece of muslin or whatever you use. That's fine on a soundstage, but I work in docks, and when you show up to a character's house, they don't always have huge rooms for us to set up in, and that's where this guy comes in handy. So instead of setting everything up on the key side, all I need to do is get a piece of fabric up against the wall, even just using tape, and then I can place the actual light almost anywhere I want, including on the other side of the room. By using a spotlight, I can shape and focus the beam so that it fires across the frame, hits the bounce, and comes back as a big soft key light. And I can even do that with just a plain white wall, like I said. So even though it is a big piece of kit, relatively speaking, it is also a lot easier and lighter to travel with than a huge grip setup, and it's made the lights I have already so much more useful. Like, I've used it with everything from my 300D all the way down to an Amaran 60X, and it really expands what you can do with creative lighting. So thanks to Lewis for reminding me to take another look at spotlights, because I just kind of ignored them thinking they had no place on run and gun shoots. I did a quick B&H search and it's showing me tons of brands making these with Bowens mount attachments, so you should have options at a lot of price points. This Aperture one is really well made, like all their stuff, and you can swap out the lenses if you want to get real fancy, but if you don't abuse your gear as badly as I do, you might be totally fine with one of the cheaper ones. I really don't care what brand you go with, but if you're trying to get better at lighting, especially when it comes to interview frames, I highly recommend getting your hands on a spotlight attachment and playing around with it, because it opens up a ton of possibilities. Okay, we're getting close to the end here and just 2 things left on the list, but I wanted to shout out Hollyland again, because they've been doing a really great job of bringing out affordable solutions to on-set problems that have traditionally been really expensive. And here I'm talking about wireless monitoring, obviously, which might sound like it's only for big crews, but I'd argue it's possibly even more important for small teams. Like when I'm doing an interview setup either on my own or with just 1 or 2 people to help, one of the biggest time wasters is constantly having to run back and forth between the camera and the lights to see what the setup looks like. And when you're trying to be really precise with your look and you're constantly adjusting or tweaking things, that can legitimately add up to hours on your setup time. By having a wireless monitor, you can just carry it around and you see what your camera sees, even on the other side of the room. The industry standard here has been Teradek for a long time, and I do really like their stuff, but for a lot of people, it's just prohibitively expensive. The genius of Hollyland is bringing tools like this to the indie market for a fraction of the price, but that still have enough of the functionality to make it work for professionals. Because no, it's not as fast as a Teradek, and if I was shooting Dune 3 and had a crew of 200, it wouldn't be my first choice. But for a team of 5 or 3 or even 1 that doesn't want to spend thousands of dollars and can live with a quarter-second delay or whatever on their feed, this is gold. I've talked about Hollyland's system before, and I used their Mars transmitter to send feeds to an iPad all the time, but a couple months ago they sent me their upgraded Pyro setup, which makes this even slicker by giving me dedicated handheld monitors that I can give off to a director or mount on a stand or even just carry around my neck. There's little strap loops here. Now these monitors themselves are actually transmitters, like I can put antennas on the top, so if you wanted, you could put one on the camera to have a giant 7-inch display and then send a signal from that to another monitor that can then move around the location with you. Or you can use a small transmitter to send a feed to multiple monitors at once, or even to iPads or phones. I love stuff that pushes the boundaries of what small teams can afford, and Hollyland seems to be one of the biggest disruptors in this space right now, so I wanted to mention it because the Pyro system has been very useful on some of my recent shoots. I did have a weird power supply issue with mine where I couldn't get the USB port to power the unit, and I had to switch to using NPF batteries, but it wasn't a huge deal, and there's a good chance it's actually because so many of my USB cables are terrible garbage. Either way though, a very cool product that's about 75% cheaper than traditional options, so it's definitely worth including on this list. And then lastly, I wanted to mention something that I'm personally just getting into, but has the potential to open up a ton of options for making my gear work the way I want to. So as an example, when I first opened the Pyro system, I realized that because the way it was built, there wasn't really a good place for me to attach Velcro tape, which is how I normally mount accessories to my camera rig. It's just sort of indented a bit so the Velcro wouldn't stick out enough to hook on to my camera. So what I really needed was a raised plate that could fit into the NPF battery slot that then I could tape over. Sounds pretty simple, but no matter what I searched on B&H or Amazon, like NPF battery plate, battery cover, insert whatever I could think of, I couldn't really find what I wanted. Then a friend asked why I didn't just print my own, and that made me think. And don't worry, I'm not telling you to buy a 3D printer because I'm definitely not doing that, but a quick search on Facebook Marketplace and I found dozens of people literally who would print anything I wanted for super cheap. Then I Googled NPF battery slot cover 3D print and found multiple free plans to download for exactly what I wanted. I sent those off to the printer, and the next day I had the perfect piece that I wanted for like $5. So this isn't a recommendation to print NPF battery slot covers, and I'm maybe pretty late to the party here, but I did want to shout out the fact that these days, if you need something very specific that you can't find for sale, you can just get it made. I might sound like a boomer right now, and I'm sorry if I do, but it's definitely new to me, and I think this is going to solve a ton of small issues for me, just like this one. Like, do you need a little cable holder or a monitor cover or a widget to attach something to something else? Totally doable and for very little money. Just something to think about. So there we go, 6 pieces of gear I didn't buy for Black Friday, but earned a shout out for being very good at what they do. Thanks to all these companies for making cool stuff and pushing the boundaries of what film gear can do on a budget. And for any marketing reps watching, please, please, please stop asking me to review your phone gimbals and AI-powered web editors. It's just not gonna happen. See ya.